Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MLB Sunday Waiver Wire, presented by Circling the Bases and NBC Sports EDGE. My name is Chris Crawford, and also welcome to everybody who is listening to this on Circling the Bases, a podcast that is also presented by NBC Sports EDGE. My name is still Chris Crawford on both of those formats. Thanks, everybody who is joining us live. I am joined by my very special guest today, Mr. Ryan Boyer. Ryan, how's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm okay. I will be honest with you, that game took a little bit out of me. It was, for those of you who are joining us live, we just watched a not great baseball game between the San Diego Padres and the Washington Nationals. Final score 6-0. Felt a little less close than that, Ryan, if I'm being completely honest. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the Nationals can take a lot out of you watching them these days.
That is a really bad baseball team.
But I mean, the Blake Snell experience is on one of those upswings.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Blake Snell because this is going well so far. 6 innings of 3-hit baseball in this one, no walks and 10 strikeouts, 103 pitches, 67 of them for strikes. Now, to say Blake Snell got off to a poor start to begin the season is quite the understatement, but I believe he hasn't allowed more than a run in his last 4 starts. He has lowered his ERA to 3.66 from an ERA that was around the middle of 5 to be in the middle of June. So we have seen also Blake Snell, the highs and the lows. There's lots of peaks and valleys, and it's like you said, the Blake Snell experience is kind of the perfect way to describe it. How much do you believe in Blake Snell for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, since that 2018 Cy Young season,
right?
So 2019 moving forward, you just never know what you're going to get year to year, start to start, pitch to pitch, inning to inning, any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's got his mechanics locked in, when he's throwing enough strikes like he did today, I mean, he was just putting the ball wherever he wanted today. And against the Nationals lineup that admittedly, a lot of people could take advantage of that lineup, but I don't think. I mean, the Dodgers probably wouldn't have fared terribly well against that version of Blake Snell today. Like you said, over his last 4 starts, 0.94 ERA, 39 walks, or 39 strikeouts rather, only 5 walks. 28 2/3 innings. Since July, and dating back to the beginning of July, the only bad start he's had was at Coors Field.
Right.
And we saw this in the second half last year too. He had a terrible first half last year and then was just on a complete roll before getting hurt late in the year. I mean, I would certainly be wanting to roster him for the rest of the season. He's been moving way up my rankings with the way he's pitching. I mean, you never know if with him, the Blake Snell experience, whether it's going to be the good, the bad, but he tends to go through. It's not necessarily always, good start, bad start, good start, bad start. It's like good month, bad month, good 2 months. So usually when he's on a roll, it tends to last for a while.
Right.
Like the second half last year before he got hurt, and he's on a roll right now. The Padres, though, I mean, they could use some good news. They
was there something that happened on Friday?
Did something happen with them?
I'm going to check. I was offline.
They've been in the news a little bit the last couple of weeks.
I know that I just bought a bunch of Fernando Tatis Jr. rookie cards. Some guy put a bunch of stuff up for sale, and I'm just assuming that he just needed to. Oh no. So let's talk about that real quick. And everybody who's in the chat, please drop your questions if you have questions about add or drops, suggested options, whatever you're looking for. We are here to answer it. Let's talk about the Fernando Tatis Jr. For some reason, if you somehow missed it, has been given an 80-game suspension, will not be able to play for the rest of this year, this postseason, and he will miss time to begin the year. So, Ryan, I'm just going to ask you the important question. What do you think of St. Louis? No, I'm just kidding. What if you're drafting for 2023? Where is Fernando Tatis Jr. going to rank in your rankings? And I know that's a very broad question, and a lot of things are going to happen. But like, can you even justify selecting him in the first 3 rounds now?
I think you can. I mean, I haven't admittedly delved too deep into my 2023 rankings at this point, but so I'd have to break that down further at some point. But 32 games, right? He's going to miss first 32 games of the next season.
Yes, which is about a month and a week.
And and as we know, hasn't exactly been a
beacon
bastion
of health.
Am I saying that right? Bastion of health.
Yeah.
However you pronounce that word.
Not unlucky with health, to be sure.
Yes, unlucky with health, we'll say.
Yes. Yeah.
But man, like that, like most of you, I'm sure, when that news came down, when I saw it on the Bird app last Friday, it was just complete shock. And honestly, it quickly turned to kind of just like sadness. Like it's just a huge bummer. I mean, everybody loves Fernando Tatis Jr. Like, he's just a massive talent and a great personality. He's just a great player for the game, and it stinks. I mean, we all saw the statement that he released. It's like most of those statements in the aftermath. You just can't. I don't know. I would like
Ryan,
to.
Have you ever had ringworm?
Wow. No, I have not.
I know that's a personal question. The reason I bring it up is
I believe that's a HIPAA violation, sir.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. When I was playing football in high school, a bunch of people told me, to stay in shape, you should do wrestling during the winter. And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't sound like my cup of tea, but I'll go watch a couple of practices. And when I saw 2 wrestlers have ringworm, that immediately said, absolutely not. So here's hoping he didn't have. I hope this is all just made up. Also, just the fact that, like, come on, man. You are the son of a former MLB player. You're one of the most high-profile athletes in the world. There is no way you don't know what you're ingesting in your body. And I get it. Right. Like, it's basically the closest thing to pleading the fifth. They're going to make up these stories about, what's going on and try to spin it in their PR battle way. I will say I've seen some dreadfully hot takes about the Fernando Tatis Jr. contract, and I get it. It's a lot of money. I think if Fernando Tatis Jr. if he hit the free agent market tomorrow, there were a few, and a few from writers I respected, a few from writers who also exist, and this is just one of those things where it's like, you don't need your hot take, man. This stinks, but this idea that all of a sudden that Fernando Tatis Jr. is like done as a baseball player at his age with his skill set is nonsense. Now, my concern for him going forward, of course, is the fact that he is going to be not playing in a Major League Baseball game for an awful long time. So I do wonder about a slow start when he does get back. And again, we talked about it, beacon, bastion, bewilderment of health, whatever the heck word you're supposed to say. That's something you have to be cognizant of. But I do think that there is an awful still lot to like about Fernando Tatis Jr.'s skill set. And it just stinks that we won't get to see it until like the middle of May now.
Yeah. No WBC for him as well. So that's kind of a bummer too.
That's a bummer too.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
I still think he'll be, as long as he's healthy and after the suspension, I still suspect he's going to be a superstar, both real life and fantasy. I mean, so if you can get 5 months essentially of superstar production, are you going to use a third round pick on that. It's
Yeah.
similar to
I think,
it's similar to the Ronald Acuna Jr. timeline. I mean,
yep.
he was expected to miss about the first month of this season while coming back from the ACL tear. So, refresh my memory. Where did his ADP end up? I feel like it was right around the. Oh, sorry, I got an
It's
ad
okay.
playing in the background there. I feel like it was around late second, early third with him.
Something around those lines, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably about the range Tatis is going to wind up, I would guess. Obviously, a little different circumstance, but talking about similar timelines, and I think it probably just depends on the league format too. I mean, how the replacement level in a deeper league is obviously not going to be as good. So just kind of depends on your league format, your potential roster construction and stuff like that. But I think it would probably late second, early third is probably around the range he'll end up going.
Yeah, that's fair. And by the way, Ronald Acuna's average draft position was 1.8, or 16th is actually what it is according to Yahoo, looking at their draft analyzer. So, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I will say this. I would rather have Fernando Tatis Jr. and not be able to use him than to not have Fernando Tatis Jr. and watch him help somebody else win a league. By the way, for Blake Snell, excuse me, that knew I would call him Ian Snell at least once in this podcast.
Ian Snell,
his next two starts are against, unfortunately, one of the amazing Jack Zarenzik trades that he made to make that roster better. His next two starts, he gets a rematch with the Nationals, and then he's scheduled to face the Royals after that. That's awfully friendly. I think that's going to be something that fantasy managers definitely want to be a part of. Just looking at some of the other things from the game, Will Myers had an awfully nice game, 3 for 4, drove in a couple of runs, hit a double, hitting 252, 293, 325. Seems like he swung the bat a little bit better as of late, Ryan. Is Will Myers somebody that you're interested in at all for the last couple of weeks, or last couple of months? Wishful thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, deeper leagues, I think he's fine. I mean, his path to playing time, I guess, with the Tatis fallout, I mean, he's going to have an easier time finding at bats. Another guy who I would say benefits greatly. I hate to even use that kind of phrasing with when we're talking about not being able to see Fernando Tatis Jr. play. Jurickson Profar is going to stay hitting leadoff now, and he's kind of sneakily had a great year. So him staying in the leadoff spot rather than going down to the bottom third of the lineup, probably if once Tatis came back, that's really good news for the Jurickson Profar managers. But Will Myers offers a little bit of speed. Certainly has the power when he's rolling. Has had a major issues staying healthy. Obviously, I think he's fine in deeper leagues, but he strikes out a lot. He's going to be a guy who goes through those peaks and valleys. I'm fine rostering him in 5 outfielder leagues, probably 3 outfielder leagues.
Yeah,
not rushing out to grab him there, but he's fine in 5 outfielder leagues.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, we've seen peaks and valleys from him as well. Like when he's locked in, if that sort of thing actually does exist, whether you believe it or not, it seems like he's a pretty good proof of it. It's amazing that he's only slugging 325 on the year for a guy that just showed amazing power.
Pick first base eligibility back up too, by the way, if he hasn't already done that in your format. So that's just something
that's definitely. It's always nice to have that flexibility on the bench. By the way, our buddy just Bob points out that Drew Rasmussen is through 8 innings of perfect baseball right now for the Tampa Bay Rays against the Orioles.
Pitch count at?
pitch count is at 79. So he's definitely going back out there for that ninth inning. We have not had a perfect game in almost exactly 10 years, I believe. I believe Felix Hernandez threw that perfect game in 2012 on August 15th. I could be off on that. It's very close to that date anyway. So it has been 10 years. And by the way, the team that Felix Hernandez threw that perfect game against, the Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh, the Rays. Yeah.
Yeah. So be fun to see, man. Like a no-hitter to me, has a no-hitter lost excitement for you, Ryan? Like I still think they're pretty cool, but it's like the perfect game is just so much different. But are you still excited when you get like the no-hit watch?
I mean, it's still an amazing accomplishment, but like, especially when we went through that stretch where, what did we have? Like 8 no-hitters in the span of, was that the beginning of last seaon, right?
Yeah, something like that.
I can't remember if they wound up breaking the record or not. I believe they did, but obviously that eventually tapered off. We didn't have like 40 no-hitters that we were on pace for a while, but
yes,
it's still a awesome accomplishment. Wainwright had a no-hitter going for last night for a while, the game I was actually at, but he got that broken up. Still really cool, but obviously a perfect game, that's a whole other level. I mean, how many perfect games in the history of the game are there? It's still not a super high number. Still pretty rare. That no-hitters are great, but the perfect game is just on another level.
It's so different. Like both of them involve luck, right? Like you need to have some good defensive plays. You need to have some BABIP luck on the other side if you're the pitcher. But like I have seen pitchers throw no-hitters who didn't pitch particularly well. Like I've seen the Edwin Jackson no-hitter where he walked something like 6 or 7 batters.
AJ Burnett, I believe, walked.
Yeah.
I think he walked 9 in his no-hitter.
It was a very high number. I saw one of the very first baseball games I ever saw I saw Andy Hawkins throw a no-hitter and give up 4 runs and lose. Like that was one of my very first baseball moments. And I was like, is this really a special thing? Maybe that's why I'm a little bit jaded. But like a perfect game involves a little bit of luck, but it's mostly just you being dominant. Like, it's just really a special thing. And as much as I have enjoyed Felix being the last one to have it, I'm rooting for Drew Rasmussen to get this, who's been really good this season. He's lowered his ERA even with these 8 perfect innings to a 2.72 ERA. Hey, speaking of pitching, Ryan, 2-start options. And I mean, we are deep into the year, so this stuff is important. We are relying on you. Help me, Ryan Boyer. You are my only hope. Give me some good 2-start options for the week.
Jose Quintana has an awesome 2-step this upcoming week. I mean, he's probably rostered in a good number of leagues at this point, but I believe 39% still on Yahoo right now. So it's still available in a decent number of leagues. 2.25 ERA, 13 strikeouts, 4 walks, and 12 innings in the first 2 starts with the Cardinals. If you go back to his last 2 with the Pirates as well, he's got a 1.09 ERA over his last 4 starts. He has the Rockies at home, Diamondbacks on the road this upcoming week. He actually had a really good start at Coors Field this past week. So rematch against the Rockies, and that one's coming at home. That's a very favorable matchup. And I believe it's the Rockies' first game of a road trip, and those tend to be even more favorable as they kind of readjust to those different conditions. So Jose Quintana, really great 2-start matchup this upcoming week. JP Sears is another one I really like.
Hey.
He's at the Rangers and against the Mariners. Your Chris Crawford Mariners.
My Seattle Mariners, yep.
But Mariners not a awesome matchup, but he gets to be at Oakland for that one. Yeah. 2.330 ERA in the majors so far this season for Sears. a 1.70 ERA at AAA this year.
Really good.
Yeah, not going to have a great offense backing him, obviously. But, not a ton of strikeouts at the major league level so far, but he's had a whole bunch in the minors. So I really like that setup for him. Aaron Savali has an ERA over 6 this year, so it's kind of hard to strongly recommend him, but he's got the Tigers at home and the White Sox at home. Tigers, of course, have been the worst offensive baseball all season. The White Sox, not great against righties. And Savali, if you're going back to July 1st, 3.50 ERA, 17 strikeouts to 2 walks over 18 innings. So he has pitched pretty well of late. Obviously, you're going to run into some risk there with a guy like that. He's largely a pitch-to-contact guy, and he has issues with the home run ball on occasion, but that's a pretty favorable setup. One last guy I wanted to mention, James Caprillion. Also, like JP Sears, he's at the Rangers and at home against the Mariners. 2.35 ERA over his last 7 starts. He hasn't been getting a ton of strikeouts, just 27 over his last 38 in the 3rd innings, but did show his best velocity of the season in his last start, and I think he had like 6 strikeouts in like 5 1/3, something like that. So maybe with a little more velo, you can get a few more swings and misses. So, yeah, those are some 2-star options for you. What do you got, Chris? You got anybody to recommend?
I was going to mention JP Sears if you didn't, so I'm glad you did. I really like that. You brought him up during our trade deadline chat with Colin and I, that he was a guy that was going to get an immediate opportunity. Nailed it. He's definitely gotten that immediate opportunity. Do I think he's an elite starting pitcher by any stretch of the imagination? No. And ultimately, I think what Sears becomes best at is working as that guy. If you're in an opener situation, I think he's that perfect 3 2/3 inning type of guy or 4-inning guy who still gets you the chance to get the win in the fantasy format, but you don't really have to have him facing the lineup 3 times. I'd really only want him facing a lineup twice. 1 time through would actually be kind of ideal for me, and that's easier to do if you're using that opener format. But I do think he's got a great opportunity here with Oakland. He gets to pitch his home games in a place that has so much foul ground. Decent defense. Elvis Andrus. Have you read about the Elvis Andrus comments recently, by the way, Drew?
No.
He's not happy. He is very much not happy. He is not, he considers himself an everyday player, and he's not getting that right now with Oakland giving Nick Allen a bunch of chances at shortstop.
I didn't
having watched Elvis Andrus hit over the last few years, I would respectfully disagree with a guy who is going to become a Hall of Very Good player, in my personal opinion, because he's going to end up with a bunch of hits. He was a very strong shortstop for a long time, was never an elite shortstop, but he was always in that second tier. But Elvis Andrus I don't want to say shut up and take your paycheck, but at the same time, I do want to say maybe you need to hit a little better before you're going nuts about your playing time. Yeah,
I hadn't seen that quote. That's interesting. I mean, he was
Drew Rasmussen gave up a hit.
Oh, dang!
It looks like it was it looks like it was a leadoff double by Jorge Mateo. You have no sense of history, Jorge Mateo.
Jorge Mateo has actually hit really well the last couple of months, by the way.
Really good. It has been really
contributor anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I recommended Mateo a couple of times in Yahoo videos that there's one category in particular that he specifies in, sure, but he's hit a lot better than those numbers suggest, and they're starting to rise. It's so weird to say that 231 average is no longer a something that's like a black hole in a lineup. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm still not used to that. While I'm looking at this
the other day.
Say that again.
He had a 5-for-5 game.
Yeah,
Saturday or Friday,
that will help the average for sure. While I'm looking at this Baltimore lineup, I want to ask you a question that I'm going to ask George on Tuesday during our podcast. Adley Rutschman, been really, really good, especially as of late. Has the OPS up to, looks like 781. After a pretty poor start, has hit a bunch of doubles, has looked awfully good for a rookie backstop.
Yeah.
Where does Adley Rutschman rank for you in catchers? And just give me a quick, how many catchers are you ranking immediately above Adley Rutschman? I like to make people think. I'm sorry about this.
Salvador Perez, Will Smith, probably still putting JT Realmuto above him.
Okay.
Alejandro Kirk, I think, has probably earned the nod over him right now.
Okay, so that's 4.
Wilson Contreras, maybe we have to see where he winds up.
Yeah.
I would probably put Rutschman after those guys if I'm doing off the top of my head right now. Just for 2023, I mean, I would take him over all those guys, I think, in a dynasty. Maybe I'd still side with Will Smith, but that's a close one. He's definitely in the top 10 at this point, clearly. You could certainly make an argument for top 5 for 2023. The left field at Camden Yards is not ideal.
Right.
That's suddenly a very favorable pitcher's park now. But as you said, he can contribute with a lot of doubles as well. Has fantastic plate discipline for a guy that age. He's just a really great all-around player. Should be hitting in the middle of that lineup for years to come.
Right.
Could certainly make an argument for the top 5. I think I mentioned 5 guys, so I'd probably put him 6 roughly right now going into next season. What about you?
I'm a prospect guy, right? I'm ranking him only behind Will Smith next year.
Yeah.
He's my number 2 catcher next year. And I'll say this too, if you're playing in an on-base percentage league, it's not close. I think you're talking about a guy next year in Adley Rutschman who could have that 370, 380 on-base percentage, which you can't say about any catcher, I think, outside of Will Smith right now.
Yeah, I mean, that OBP league, he easily vaults ahead of
Salvador Perez and his wonderful approach at the plate. Now, the thing about Salvador Perez is he's going to be hitting in the middle of the lineup. I think Kansas City's lineup is going to be pretty actually good next year. I know it's been disappointing next year, but I think there's some guys who are going to take some steps up. And I imagine that Salvador Perez is going to hit 30 to 35 home runs and drive in 110 to 115 runs.
Yeah.
It's just the average category. And I'm such a believer in Adley Rutschman's hit tool. He recognizes pitches so well. I really think that when I come out with my rankings next year, I think I'm going to be putting Adley Rutschman as my number 2 catcher. And I know that's going to sound like a super hot take. I've just been so impressed with what I have seen. I'm going to overrate him. I'm going to overrate Bobby Witt Jr. I'm going to overrate Julio Rodriguez. But, man, I've just been so impressed with what I have seen from Adley Rutschman. It's kind of fun to see the catcher position having these kind of options again, too, no?
Yeah. It's not a
top-heavy
wasteland.
Yes.
MJ Melendez is really impressed of late. Getting regular playing
for sure
in the outfield. That shows you how much they value his bat. He's been batting leadoff for the Royals.
Yes.
I mean, he could be just a really good fantasy option. Dalton Varsho, of course, we didn't even mention him yet. He's hasn't provided the stolen base total that we were hoping for this year. I believe he's got 8 stolen bases, but
yeah,
he could easily reach 20 home runs. He's going to retain catcher eligibility going into next season. Alejandro Kirk is still very young. Will Smith is still very young himself. It seems like he's been around forever. Maybe it's because there are so many Will Smiths that we have to think about. But,
too many.
It's the other Contreras too. He's
William.
William Contreras is kind of had a bit of a breakout himself. So yeah, it's a, like I said, not as much of a wasteland as it used to be, which when you're talking about catcher and fantasy, that's about as nice of a thing you can say about that.
I'm no longer begging to play in no catcher leagues anymore, which is what I can say. That's for the position. And as just Bob brings up, Cal Raleigh, who has been fantastic since an awful start, has been, by the way, the best nickname in baseball with Big Dumper. Come on. Big Dumper Cal Raleigh is just too good. And we've got prospects like Francisco Alvarez, who, that kind of leads into it. And I want to just talk about prospects real quick before we get going. I've mentioned this in the last few podcasts. The Rookie of the Year eligibility thing is really going to screw up some call-ups right now, because if you call up a guy right now and have him play for these final 2 months, there's a very good chance, if not a likelihood, that they are not going to have Rookie of the Year eligibility, which takes away your chance of getting that pick for those guys. So guys like Francisco Alvarez, Corbin Carroll, DL Hall, who I thought looked okay in his first start. By the way, he's going to be making the move to relief, so no longer really on the fantasy radar for me. Unless he's going to be working behind an opener, I just don't think that there's going to be really a chance. But these prospects, I really don't know if we're going to see any big-time guys get called up for the rest of the year, because I think the value of having that Rookie of the Year eligibility is going to be something that teams just can't ignore.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit on the last time I was on with you, and that's something I honestly hadn't considered a lot prior to that, but that's sure. I think that's absolutely a factor. Certainly something interesting to track down the stretch. I know, like you had mentioned, Francisco Alvarez. He's been a guy who we've heard maybe possibly the Mets could give him a look by the end of the season. Sure. Obviously, their catcher position, at least offensively, has been quite so far. Yeah. They've still got James McCann, I believe, under contract for 2 more years after this year.
Right.
That contract just never really made sense the day it was signed, and it's making less sense that day.
No, again, Steve Cohen's not going to go file Chapter 11 over it or anything like that, but It is something that, you have to be cognizant of. If Alvarez gets added to the roster, I'm adding him to my fantasy roster. But I think there's just as good of chance that we see that debut come in 2023, and that's true. Gunnar Henderson is the other interesting one for me, just because his skill set, he might rank as my top fantasy prospect to begin the year, because I think there's an opening for him to play either shortstop or third base for the Baltimore Orioles. Yeah. And he can do a little bit of everything. He can hit for average. He can hit for power. He can steal bases. He has a good approach at the plate. I just wonder if Baltimore, and again, some of this could depend too on if Baltimore's in playoff contention. And right now they certainly are, despite the fact that they tried to make moves to suggest that they are not. Oh boy, that frustrates me. But I just think that we're going to be waiting a little while for these prospects. Another guy like Tristan Casas is a guy who I think is probably ready to go contribute right now. What's the point of calling Tristan Casas up right now if you're going to have him be your first baseman next year, even with Eric Hosmer on the roster? That's still so weird to me.
Sounds really weird to say.
It does sound. Boston Red Sox Eric Hosmer. Well, that's a great way to end our show with that weirdness. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in. We do this every Sunday after the game. We appreciate your questions. We appreciate you chiming in. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit 5 stars. Please do everything that you got to do. We really appreciate it. You can follow me at Crawford_MILB. You can follow Ryan at Ryan P. Boyer. Again, we really appreciate it. We'll be back with a show. It'll be me and George Bissell on Tuesday as Colin enjoys a little bit of a vacation. Thank you, Bob. We really appreciate you tuning in.